أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله نور السماوات والأرض. مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح. المصباح في زجاجة. الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحمن الرحيم الله نور السماوات والأرض الله نور السماوات والأرض مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم صدق الله العظيم.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Shahla. I'm Shahab's sister. In complete breaking with protocol, could I please ask everyone to take out their smartphone and switch it on? And once you have done so, go to the browser of your choice, and I will tell you what to put in. And if you could then type in OW, lowercase, .ly, / capital U, capital F, small z, small v, small b, if you have good eyesight. Certainly, OW.ly / capital U, capital F, small z, v, b. And hopefully that should now bring up a presentation called My Brother Shahab, but we like to call him Tip. Has everybody managed to get there? This is just to try and get around the fact that when Nora asked me to do this, I very foolishly assumed, oh right, pictures, PowerPoint. We're in a church. So hence the kind of working around technology a little bit. So why do we call him Tip? We call him Tip because my mother decided, for some unknown reason, that my brother was really Tipu Sultan come back again. He was born in Malta. If you could move on to the next slide now. And you should be able to scroll through this. Yeah. He was born in Mount Alvernia Hospital on the 11th of December 1966. Mount Alvernia was a mission hospital in Singapore, which was founded by missionaries, run by nuns, and when he was born there, it was still run by nuns. As was customary, my father whispered the azan into his ear. As was not so customary, Mother Superior then appeared and asked my parents' permission to take him to Mass. So he went off as a babe in arms to his first Catholic Mass, was sprinkled with holy water, and then represented to my parents, fully induced both into the multi-faith culture of Singapore and into his first rituals of comparative religion. Next slide. As you can see from this picture, he was a very happy, chubby, smiley baby, and I absolutely adored him. We went through many years without violence. That ensued later. My cousin Shaheen was a great part of our lives when we were young, and that's a picture of her holding Shahab as a baby. She visited us in Singapore often. We visited her in Pakistan. And on one of those visits, he contracted malaria and I contracted measles, and we were basically in a sanitarium run by her mother. And diarrhea was just a standard pastime whenever we visited. Next slide. This is Shaheen again, and my mum and my uncle, and me, the grumpy one, and my brother, the smiley one in the middle. My dad taking the photograph on the back of our VW Beetle. Shahab has had a love of small cars, and I think in later life moved on to drive a Mini. He was a very photogenic child, and here he is posing in the hope of making it to Royal Ascot one day. The next slide. He took his first steps on his very first birthday, wearing his hat, and was relentlessly, as you can see, progressing towards the professorial chair. Certainly in the next photograph, that's Shahab in the center with myself and our very good friend Sidhu, who called him the professor. Sidhu is now some property magnate in Chennai. Why my brother is in a box, I have absolutely no idea, but I was rather charmed by this photograph. I don't think I put him there, and I don't think I ever shut the lid on him either. These are two pictures of Shahab with two of my Madrasi aunties, Auntie Vasanta, whom we're still in contact with till today, who was actually devastated to hear, and Auntie Radha. And there began his penchant for beautiful women. This is my mum and Shahab, my mum holding her chubby, happy golden boy. And there's always remained a very, very deep bond between them, as you would expect, between mother, Desi mother, and young son. He has always been her darling, and she spent a lot of time with him, reading to him, encouraging him, and helping him forwards in his career and in his studies and in his thoughts and in his confidence at times when a lot of what was tradition would have basically pushed him backwards. He was born, unfortunately, into a family of engineers, medics, and of course the expectation was that he would take up one of these professions. Unlike his older sister, who was apparently deemed to be a whirlwind of potential destruction, my brother was a contemplative and thoughtful child, as you can see from the expression on his face in these photographs. He learnt to read at a very young age, or actually he loved being read to, and Mum spent a lot of time reading with him and reading to him. And he completely memorized his dinosaur book by the time he was about 3 years old. At the age of 4, Mum took him to the library with me, and he arrived saying he would like library membership, to which the librarian said, "But can you read?" And he said, "Yes, of course I can." And he said, "Well, show me." And he poddled off the shelves and returned with this treatise on fish philosophy. And he sat down with the librarian and read through One Fish, Two Fish from the beginning to the end, and was duly admitted to the National Library of Singapore as the youngest member ever. What the librarian did not realize at the time was Shahab had actually memorized the book from beginning to end, that he knew exactly where to turn the pages. And so if there are any librarians in the audience, Michael Grossman, please take note. He had actually learnt to read and his love of books also came out from the fact that, according to my mother, he had a very, very lazy ama who basically sat him in front of the aquarium and turned pages of the books with him. So even at the age of 2, he was capable of turning pages without ripping them. The next slide is a photograph of Vicar Uncle and Auntie Rosie, and they were our neighbors in Singapore, and Shahab absolutely adored them. They had 2 very beautiful daughters, no son, so he was a surrogate son, and he would go over there with his projects, with his balloon debates, with whatever he wanted to discuss, and sit down and talk to Vicar Uncle, and they were soulmates. Auntie Rosie, to him, was the absolute epitome of grace, beauty, and charm in a woman. Despite the fact that she had 2 beautiful daughters, he always said, oh, well, the mother walks in the room. She eclipses everybody. Auntie did ask him at one point, and which of my daughters would you like to marry? And being the charmer that he was, his reply was, whichever turns out to be more like you, Auntie. Of course, ultimately, he married neither. But he did remain very, very good friends. If you go to the next slide, that's a picture of Auntie Rosie with my brother at the far end, looking wistfully on at these 2 gorgeous women, and finally weaseling his way to sit between them. Auntie is on his left, and Farah, their daughter, on his right. He and Farah have always been very close, really from the time they were children, from the age of 3. My brother had a soft down pillow because, bless him, poor child, he used to suffer with headaches. The rest of us were relegated to whatever pillows came our way. And in those days, when our parents were off at dinner parties, we would be deposited at various people's houses and often round at Auntie Rosie's. So Farah used to rush over to the pillow to share it with him. And in exchange, she had to listen to his stories. And she said, initially I used to go for the pillow, but then I started going for the stories. And there, that's where began Shahab the raconteur, whom we know so well. The next photograph is one of my grandmother, who came to stay with us when Shahab was about 8. They shared a bedroom, and my grandmother spoke impeccable Urdu. She spoke English and read English as well, but never let on. So she actually inculcated a love for the language in my brother and refined his language over the years as well. The other thing she had was a deep love for history. And one day when he came home from school and announced, I have learnt about Richard the Lionheart, she said, and do you know about Sultan Salahuddin Abdi? And he went, no, and she told him the stories. And then she said, when I go back to Pakistan, I'll get you a book. Of course, he couldn't wait that long. I mean, when's she going to go back? When's she going to send me the book? So next slide. So he contacts Auntie Munijeh, who's a lady on the right-hand side of the photograph, or actually, as you look at the photograph on the right-hand side. And Auntie Munijeh was a head of the University Library of Singapore. And he contacted her and he said, Auntie, I need a book about Sultan Salahuddin. And she said, but Shahab, you're only 8 years old, and you'll be able to read. And he said, yes, of course I will. She duly provided the book, and he did read it with the help of the dictionary and my mother. And again, so from a very, very young age, a love for literature, a love for history, a love for language, and a love for things beautiful, really. But everything was not love and beauty. Over here, he is holding me to ransom. And my best friend, Roshni, who was, of course, dressed identically, because we always had identical frocks, is being held to ransom by her brother, Ashok. And I think anyone who's ever had any kind of conversation with him will have this understanding of being held to ransom, but probably more metaphorically as he grew older. Uncle Pilu was sort of an erratic fixture in our lives. He worked on a ship, and my dad had worked on the ship with him when Dad was a ship surgeon, but